Hello. This session is about the craft arts. Craft art is considered to be distinct from fine art. Fine art is meant to be looked at and contemplated. Paintings, sculpture, installations. Craft art is also sometimes called applied art because it is artwork that is functional and utilitarian, like jewelry, scrapbooks, pottery, knives and weapons, lamps, and clothing. Ceramics is the art or process of making art objects out of baked clay, while pottery refers to objects such as bowls, cups, pots, vases, and plates made of clay. Ceramics can refer to the creation of clay sculptures, and it can refer to the creation of pottery. Similar to the distinction of fine art versus craft art, pottery is functional, while ceramic sculpture is simply decorative or aesthetic. What is clay? Clay is a form of soil that is made up of fine particles that include kaolin. Clay is the kaolin is a clay material, a mineral that is very malleable. It holds the particles of soil together while still allowing the clay to be soft and workable. Did you make mud pies when you were a kid, like using Georgia red clay? They would easily hold their shape. But if you tried to use something like topsoil or other kinds of dirt, the shape would crumble away. And this is because of the lack of kaolin in other soils and dirt. There are different types of ceramics: porcelain, stoneware, and earthenware. Clay is almost pure kaolin. It's very bright white, and it is used to make porcelain. Porcelain clay is very strong, and after firing, it is glossy and non porous. It can hold very thin shapes better than any other kind of clay. Porcelain clay is typically very delicate as well, for the objects are able to become delicate because of how strong the clay is, that such thin, delicate objects can be made from this kind of clay. You wouldn't create something that thin out of stoneware or earthenware because it just wouldn't work. Chinese porcelain in China is extremely glossy white and can also be made so thin that it's sometimes translucent. If you look at a china teacup, for instance, and hold it up to the light, stoneware becomes very hard and durable when fired at high temperatures. It is not porous, and it's popular for use for dishes and cookware because of how durable it is, and because many varieties of stoneware do not need to be glazed in order to be non-porous. Lastly, earthenware. It's a very soft and earthy clay. It is easily chipped, and it is porous. It requires glazing to seal it. It's popular for plant pots because it's porous. You might overwater a plant just a little, and the porous nature of the earthenware helps the water seep and drain out of the pot if there's too much water. Earthenwares are typically very earthy in color, reds and browns and yellows. Stoneware was used to create the Tomplol ceramic sculpture at the bottom right in this picture. It looks like a big piece of rock, but it's actually a clay sculpture. The artist used stoneware to make the piece look more like stone. Now on the top right, that piece is made of porcelain. Notice how thin and delicate the piece is. It almost looks like fabric or wrapped ribbons. You couldn't do that with any other kind of clay than porcelain. Terracotta is a hard reddish brown earthenware that's used in sculpture and pottery. It's used for ceramic art objects, and you've seen it before because it's one of the most popular clays used for plant pots. Terracotta was also used to make the ancient Chinese terracotta army of Shi Huangdi. Terracotta being that hardish reddish brown earthenware, Was used because it was in great abundance, and the terracotta army, also called the terracotta soldiers or warriors, is one of the most famous examples of terracotta ceramic sculpture in the world. It was rediscovered in 1974 by farmers digging a well in China. There have been over 8,000 of them unearthed. They were originally created to serve as an afterlife army to guard the tomb of Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of Qin, and it's also the first emperor of unified China. So not just human figures were found, but also horses and chariots, acrobats, musicians, and other members of the royal court. Most of the items found were made from terracotta, but there were also some bronze elements. The warriors were originally armed with actual weapons, most of which were pilfered when a rebellion occurred a few decades after the end of the Qin dynasty, and the rebels took the weapons from the sculptures. The tomb of Emperor Qin has not been opened for various reasons. It's believed to contain even more figures and treasures, but it's also surrounded by a lake of mercury. The figures were originally painted. Once they were exposed to air and elements, most of the paint chipped and flaked off, which is one of the reasons some of the other portions of the complex have been left sealed. Even though there are thousands of soldiers, each one is slightly different from the next, in an attempt to make the army more like a real army of individuals. The way that's done is using slip casting. This is a method of working with clay. A liquid of sifted clay is thinned and it becomes the consistency of cream. It can be used to cast the same ceramic object over and over again by pouring it into a plaster mold. Remember that discussion of casting from sculpture? As the clay hardens and the moisture is pulled out, it takes on the shape of the mold. Hollow ceramic objects can be cast by pouring slip into a mold and then rolling it around, pouring it out, and repeating the process until the desired thickness of the object is achieved. Slip was used to cast the pieces of the terracotta army. They were not all created by hand. However, to make sure that each soldier was slightly different from the next, the clay castings would be pulled out of the mold while still slightly moist, which allowed artists to change small details such as the nose and eyebrows and facial hair before the clay completely hardened. These are different methods of making pots, and if we were in class, we would do this, but this is how to make a pinch pot. To make a pinch pot, you simply take a ball of clay in your hands and start pinching with the thumb and forefinger until a small pot or bowl shape is achieved. There's another way of building a pot called slab building. And slabs are created by evenly rolling out clay and then cutting out the desired shape, kind of like cookie dough. And they can be placed together and seamed together at the edges to build the form. Slabs can be used to create all different kinds of shapes. As you see below, the leaves are the slabs. When attaching pieces of clay to one another, such as attaching a slab to another slab, every point of contact between the two pieces of clay must first be scored and slipped. Scoring refers to roughing up the area that the clay pieces will connect. So slip refers to the liquid clay, which is then applied to the scored areas to form a strong bond, kind of like a glue. Scoring and slipping is vital to create a strong bond between two pieces, as well as to ensure there are no air bubbles trapped between the pieces. There's another method called coil building that's used to create pots. Coils are created by rolling out ropes of clay and then stacking them up on one another or coiling them. Coils are best for creating more organic forms since you can change the shape of the object based on how you lay the coils on top of each other. Think of building a leg out of clay. A leg is not a straight cylinder. It changes shapes. It's narrow at the ankle and wider at the calf, and narrows again at the knee, or widens again at the thigh. Coiling would allow the artist to follow these contours. Coil-built objects are below, and you can see how they use the coil and then smooth them down so you couldn't see evidence of the coil. Wheel throwing is the best and quickest way to create perfectly round, smooth, and symmetrical vessels. Artists use a machine, a throwing wheel, or the potter's wheel, to work the clay while it's spinning between their hands. The traditional version of the throwing wheel is shown on the top right. It's simply a big machine with a big heavy flywheel at the bottom, which the artist kicks to keep moving. The flywheel spins the smaller wheel at the top of the machine, which is where the clay is placed. We also have electric throwing wheels. They're controlled by a pedal similar to a sewing machine. Clay must be kept quite moist while throwing to ensure it's malleable. This can be pretty messy. The hardest part about throwing on the wheel is starting off and centering the clay. It has to be perfectly in the center of the wheel in order to ensure a perfectly round, symmetrical object. Once completed, a wire is used to slice the bottom, separate the piece from the wheel, and then the piece is left to dry. Once you've finished your clay piece, it's left out to air dry. Once it's dry, it's called greenware. This is because it's still fresh. It's still green clay, green just being fresh, that hasn't been fired. So if the artist decides they don't like the piece, while it's still greenware, it can be broken up and placed into water to become clay again, wet clay again. You can't do this after you fire it, though, in a kiln. So the greenware is then placed inside of a kiln, which is a very large, hot oven. And this removes the rest of the moisture that the air drying couldn't remove. After firing the ceramic pieces that are now called bisqueware, they're sturdy and ready to be decorated or used. Air bubbles should be avoided in your ceramic pieces that go into the kiln because if there's air bubbles, the moisture turns it into steam, which builds pressure inside the air bubble. It eventually will break and shatter the ceramic piece and any pieces around it. Ceramic glazing is a glassy coating that's applied to the surface of a ceramic object. Glaze contains silica, which results in this glassy surface. Ground metals and other chemical compounds help produce a range of colors. Glaze is not only used to decorate, but also to seal vessels and make them watertight, make them non-porous. After firing all the moisture out of the ceramic pieces, it's then ready for decorating. Glaze can be poured on, brushed on, or dipped. The object can be dipped into the glaze. But glaze is not paint. It's meant to coat the entire surface of the ceramic object. You can't really create predictable patterns and designs with glazes because the glass runs together inside of the kiln. It is a liquid when it's applied, but after firing in the kiln, it turns to that glassy coating, like you see on the right. Liquid glaze looks completely different from the finished glaze surface. The color of the glaze when it's applied is almost never the same color that comes out of the kiln. After applying the glaze, the ceramic piece is placed back into the kiln where the liquid glaze is heated, and that is what makes it change colors as it comes out of the kiln. As you can see, we have pieces on the left before firing and pieces on the right after firing. Ceramic workers will usually make a set of swatches, test tiles, to see what it's going to look like once they are fired. And the biggest difference is why many ceramicists have to do this because they have to see what it's going to look like. This will help them plan. When you use two or more glazes together, you can see how they run together and drip in these unpredictable manners. This is why you can't paint with glaze. You can never predict exactly what two glazes are going to do, even if applied in the exact same manner. because of variations in the kiln environment. Notice the red and yellow glaze pots. They all have different designs, even when the two glazes were applied in the same manner. Many ceramicists like this unpredictability and look forward to the surprise that comes out of the kiln. In order to paint on a ceramic artwork, an underglaze is used. An underglaze works essentially just like paint. They won't run together and drip out inside the kiln like a glaze will. They're the exact same color after firing as they are in liquid form, and the colors are matte, not glossy. It's called an underglaze because if you wish to make the surface glossy, like a regular glaze, you can apply a clear or color glaze on top of the underpainting. Here's an example of how it looks when you glaze over an underpainting. On the left is before firing, and the colors do change slightly in the kiln. When porcelain is decorated, underglazes are almost often used to paint the designs, leaving large portions unpainted to show off the pure white surface of the porcelain. Underglaze, remember, is the technique that's used for the famous blue and white porcelain pieces from the Ming Dynasty. The deep dark blue pigment was created from cobalt, more than likely imported from Iran. Chinese trade with Persia, which is what they used to call Iran, has opened up during the Ming Dynasty, and cobalt was a popular import. Also, blue and white were the favorite colors of the Ming court. So the blue would be painted on as an underglaze onto the porcelain object, and then a coating of clear glaze would be added on top and fired to give the glassy appearance and seal in the design. This style of porcelain decoration is still popular today, and you'll find knockoffs of Ming Dynasty blue and white porcelain pieces in many modern home decor stores. Ceramics, remember, is what we're overall talking about, but there's different types. And the Greeks used black figure and red figure as a way to decorate their pottery. Slip is used to create decorations and designs on this. So glaze isn't the only way to decorate ceramic pieces. Slip decoration is matte, doesn't seal the clay, and the only colors available are based on colors of clay: black slip from black clay, red slip from red clay, and white slip from white clay. Slip can also be applied directly to greenware, meaning that only one firing is necessary instead of the two firings needed for glazed ceramic ware. These are examples of early Greek pottery decoration, which is referred to as red figure pottery or black figure pottery, depending on how the slip is applied. Black figure pottery is created by painting with black slip to create figures and designs on the natural red clay background. The artist is painting the positive shapes. Red figure pottery is created by painting the background with black slip to make the red color of the clay stand out as the figures and designs. The artist is painting the negative space. The artist is painting around the figure rather than the actual figure. Black figure was the earliest method, with red figure pottery becoming more popular toward the end of the archaic Greek period. This is probably because red figure is harder. It's more complex than black figure methods. Greek artists would also use sharp tools to scrape away the slip for some of the fine details. Glass blowing is a process used to open up and shape a glass vessel. A hollow tube, a blowpipe, is dipped into molten glass, and then air is blown through the tube, which causes the hot glass to expand into a spherical bubble. The vessel can also be shaped by rolling and pulling the hot glass with tools. Glass blowing is not just used to create vessels, it's also used to create decorative artwork and sculpture. Each of the individual pieces of this glass sculpture was blown separately, and when transported to the installation site, each one is packaged separately. The pieces are then assembled together at the installation site. So this means the sculpture can change slightly every time it's set up. Notice how the outdoor installation of the piece on the left is a little different from the indoor installation on the right. Dale Chihuly is a contemporary artist known for creating large glass sculptures that are art objects, but are meant to remind the viewer of decorative art, such as chandeliers, like in the image here. Chihuly always considers how the glass and light will work together in his artwork. These glass pieces are installed over a skylight, allowing light to shine through each piece. Pieces flow together and the appearance of a solid stained glass window is created. These glass pieces are installed specifically to be viewed up close, but you can also clearly see the individual pieces when you are up close. So when you step back, it does appear like one big piece of glass, but when you get close to it, it looks kind of like being underneath a school of jellyfish. Here's some more glass work by Dale Chihuly at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens in 2004. Glass can also be cast. Most of the commercial glass products that we buy are created by casting. Glass can be cast by placing pieces of glass into a mold and placing it inside of a kiln to heat and melt glass. Glass can also be cast by pouring molten liquid glass directly into a mold. And these are both hand casting techniques, as well as industrial glass casting. It takes a lot less time and costs a lot less than glass blowing, which is why most commercial glass is cast. Early glass was not perfectly clear and transparent like much of today's glass. The Romans were the first to develop glass blowing. Glasswork had been around before the Romans, like cut glass and melting and modeling glass, but blowing glass came from the Romans around 50 BCE. The most common component of glass is silica, which is found in the sand. Nowadays, we can filter the sand or create pure silica glass thanks to innovations in technology, which is why perfectly clear, transparent glass can be created easily today. Early civilizations, though, didn't have these abilities, so impurities in the glass create a cloudy, colored appearance. What we're looking at now are ancient Roman vessels. This is actually the Portland vase from the 3rd century CE. The Romans learned that by adding impurities, they could change the opacity and the color of the glass. This is an example of cameo glass, which is known for the relief images of milky opaque glass with a background of a flat, solid, darker color of glass. So, first, they would blow the main form of the glass vessel out of a dark background. Then they would coat this blown glass piece with a layer of white glass. And then lastly, they would carve and chip away the white layer of glass to reveal the dark glass underneath and create a relief sculpture. And this would create what is known as a cameo. So to avoid sharp edges of this cut and carved glass, then the image would be sanded and buffed to smooth it out. And that's what you see, the result you see here. Here are more examples of ancient Roman cameo glasswork. Stained glass windows are decorative windows created from colored glass. Glass is stained by mixing impurities with the molten liquid glass to create the desired color and effect. Stained glass windows became very popular during the Middle Ages and specifically the Gothic period. It was essentially what the Romans were doing by adding color to their glass, too. Stained glass windows were made possible because of innovations in architecture, such as the pointed arch, which we will discuss next week in architecture lesson. The light that the windows create inside the church was meant to represent the divine. The diffused light would create a warm and awe-inspiring atmosphere inside of the cathedrals. During the Gothic period, these windows served another purpose. They were meant to tell stories and relay information from the Bible to a population that was largely illiterate. The Moses window on the left illustrates various stories and events in the life of Moses. And the Tree of Jesse window on the right is a kind of holy family tree showing the lineage of Jesus. Many stained glass windows are example of came glasswork, which refers to the joining of the pieces of glass through cane strips of lead, brass, zinc, copper, or foil. These are the black lines that you see separating the different pieces of glass. Each glass piece is given a cane border, and then the borders are welded or soldered together. Notice that most of the colors here are fairly flat, just one solid color in each panel. The black detailing in the Mary and Jesus window is simply painted on the glass panels. It's not part of the original staining process. So the little facial features that you see are painted. Real glass is a technique of mixing together different colors of hot glass. It yields an iridescent finish. Louis Comfort Tiffany was a glass artist and designer from the late 1800s and early 1900s, and he was known for his glass work, which was much more realistic and dimensional than typical stained glass. He created a technique for staining his glass that resulted in iridescent and opalescent effects. Glass he created from this process is called Favreal glass. What is the difference in the glass work in this Favreal glass than that you in relationship to earlier stained glass flat colors? Notice how the glass pieces within the cane have many dimensions of color. This is what Tiffany was known for and why his glass work became so popular and so famous. Tiffany lamps became popular in the early 20th century. These lamps were created using the same stained glass and cane techniques as Tiffany's stained glass windows. Okay, that's all for this session.